Hey everyone, welcome back to the CP Whiskey Creek in N-Scale. I'm Chris, and this video is going to be a recap of the Big E, Springfield, Amherst, whatever you want to call it, the Railroad Hobby Show put on by the Amherst Railway Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. So this year everything worked out well in advance between work and at home that I was able to actually attend the show. So all the stars aligned and I made plans to actually get the time off work and head down and spend quite a few days actually down there. And let me tell you that this is not just a hobby show, this is not just a train show, it is an experience. It is truly one of those opportunities that if you have at least one opportunity to go, I highly recommend it. And now stick around to the end of the video to see why I won't be back next year, but I am very glad that I was able to go this year and experience everything. So let's take a little sit back and rewind and see how it all started. So for me, it's a 8-hour trek from home to the hotel I was staying in. So I broke it into short little legs. One stop I had to make obviously was the last Tim Hortons in Canada. And since I was traveling by myself, then I kept myself occupied with all the train-related podcasts along the way, listening to Around the Layout, Modeler's Life, Mike Rose, and of course the Crossing Gate. The trek down was actually not too bad, pretty clear driving and nice weather. Obviously I had to stop first at the Cracker Barrel, one of my favorite American restaurants, and have some sweet tea and fried chicken. Then I moved along to Utica, and this area was recommended by quite a few rail fans. It's a nice little area to right off the highway to pull up, and they have a nice steam locomotive on display just outside of the station. It's actually an Amtrak station that I didn't see any Amtraks while I was there, but a lot of area to be able to walk around. They have the Adirondack Scenic Railroad out of there as well. So I was able to check out some of their locomotives and rolling stock that they have. Quite a few old passenger cars that they have there. I'm not sure if they're slated for restoration and preservation, but some of them are in pretty rough shape, and then other ones obviously are their cream of the crop. While I was there, a CSX came flying through with lots of containers, and there's also a Mohawk local that was working the yard there, and I also got to see the Adirondack, which looks like an XCN unit, head out for some work by itself somewhere along the line. And I had a nice interaction with one of the local police officers there. No, I didn't get into trouble. So I finally pulled into the Hampton Inn, the official hotel of the Modeler's Life podcast. We went out for a nice dinner at the Longhorse Steakhouse and socialized in the lobby downstairs and just sort of hung out. And that's one of the cool things about the hobby, is just sort of bringing everyone together for some good fellowship. So Friday I ended up spending the day rail fanning. So I first went to the East Deerfield yard. It's for the Pan Am Railway, and spent the first part of the morning hanging out there. Originally I was actually going to do some of the clinics, and that's what I was planning when I booked my hotels and booked all the time off and everything for me to come down on Thursday, and then I was going to do Friday doing the clinics associated to the hobby show. Once I saw the actual lineup of the clinics, I decided not to do those. None of them really jumped out as of interest to me. The ones that they had the year before were a little bit more interesting for what I was looking for and what I wanted to get out of things. So still wasn't going to waste a Friday down in somewhere new and without a list of things to do, and especially since I was down here from Canada, I didn't even have access to my phone. I was only using my phone in Wi-Fi areas, so it gave me a lot of sort of what they call windshield time, just sort of hanging out by the tracks and just enjoying my time watching trains go by, taking pictures and thinking about things to work out on my layout. So originally I started in the north end of the yard and then worked my way back around to the south end and found this really beat up caboose just sort of off to the side, and it's definitely seen some better days. And checked out, there wasn't a lot of activity that was going on in the yard itself, but they had no shortage of locomotives in the yard and a lot of things that have been patched out, former CSX stuff and some former CN stuff and a little bit of everything. So it was kind of cool to see everything that they had there. My next stop was down in a place called Windsor Locks, so it was actually south of the hotel, and I caught this local heading southbound, and quite a few other rail fans were in the area for the same thing, and caught a couple of local commuter trains going past. And then I finally went to a restaurant called the Steaming Tender, and this has tons of stuff on display, railway related, and inside and out the decor is all train related. Tons of stuff to check out and enjoy, and it's actually sort of at the intersection of a diamond where at one point both lines were tied up with stuff. So the local New England Central was trying to get through, but a CSX garbage train, someone had come by and said it was the Springfield local, was stopped on the diamond itself, and the poor New England Central couldn't get through. So it was kind of neat being able to see so much activity right at that one intersection. But once they finally cleared up, then the New England Central crew were able to finish off whatever switching job that they were doing. It looked like they were actually dropping off stuff for CSX. So that brings us to Saturday. I showed up nice and early because I wanted to get parking, so I was there about just before 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had my map of all the vendors and everything all mapped out, and the parking lot around me just filled in super fast. There's tons of people that were showing up there, and one thing that I did was made sure that I took a photograph of where I was parked so I would remember. I was near the slippy slide, which was sadly out of order. And there's a massive lineup of people buying tickets to be able to get in, and a lineup of cars even when I finally decided to get into line. And this was the lineup to go into the Better Living Center. So I went to the shorter line into the Young Center. And even that line behind me filled up real fast. So once inside the Young building, this was unreal to be able to see this much trains packed into just this one building, and this was just one of the four. It took a moment to be able to take it all in, and this wasn't even the big building. That's the Better Living Center. So I went and checked out the MRC booth first. That's what I use on my layout, and I used the Wi-Fi module that they have as well, so I could use my phone. So it's nice chatting with them and see the stuff that they had on display. And they even said that there's quite a few things in the pipe to come out in the near future, sometime later this year. So checked around there, and then started checking out some of the actual layouts. Throughout each one of the buildings, there were so many different modular layouts and just large scale, every scale possible. It seemed like they had stuff running trains, and especially coming from Canada, our layouts at the train shows, sometimes it's just basically one T-track setup, or maybe like an Operation Lifesaver has a small little loop, but there was so much to see and do, and people to talk to, and just watching trains run by. Like, it's almost like a rail fan's dream to be able to just walk around all the different displays that they have on. Also got to check out and connect with some of the local museums and historical societies. Many of the northeastern states had their various organizations on display, and got to talk to some of them and do some networking as well for my own endeavors with the Brant Railway Heritage Society. So, like I said, just walking around and seeing the detail and keeping in mind that all of these layouts are all designed to pack up and move around. They're all modular in one way or another, and so many of these T-track ones for N scale. Like, this show is a N scaler's dream because there's so much N scale on display here, and the different ideas. And I mean, I ended up taking well over 600 photographs and pictures of all kinds of different things, different layout ideas for myself, or even just different ideas of how other people have done things. Overall, it's extremely inspirational. Can't forget your required Star Wars module. The cool thing about shows like this is it not only brings everyone together to see trains, but it also allows you to meet people like all the podcasters. So I got to meet Ray from Around the Layout, and as you'll see later on in the video, quite a few other people that are podcasters and people that I listen to on a regular basis. Those are the people that keep you inspired in the hobby, and it's one of those things that, especially if you're looking for that 15 minutes a day or hour a day of railroading, sometimes you can't actually sit down at your layout and do stuff, but still staying connected in the hobby by listening to other people, how they do things and what inspires them and what got them into the hobby. That's all stuff that you soak in, and you realize that there's so many people out there, all different types of walks of life, that all enjoy model railroading. So then I moved over to the straw building, and this is probably one of the smaller ones. It still seems bigger than any of the buildings that we have in Southern Ontario full of train stuff, and again, this is just one of 4 buildings, so it had quite a few layouts still on display, and then obviously quite a few vendors as well. So got to walk around, and again, you see different things. Like this is a trolley type layout that they have the pantograph up above, and you get to see various different scales on display and just different techniques that people do, and even just different levels of interest. I'm a modern era modeler, and then so many of these layouts span all kinds of different eras and interests. Outside they had a fishbowl bus. No, it wasn't the Rapido one, it's someone else's. And then they also had a train van that was on display, and that led me into the Better Living Center. So this was how I spent my afternoon on Saturday, was in the busiest of all the buildings. This one is where, again, tons of layouts, tons of running trains everywhere, as well as tons of people. Lots of vendors, and this is the one that had the biggest lineup that everyone was trying to get into right away, and you can see why, because this is where there's so much to see and do, and especially for people that maybe they're local or they're only coming for the one day. If you're going to only do one day, then you want to hit up this building probably at least first. I also dropped by the Otter Valley setup. You might recognize Trackside Mike and Chris from Go Via or Go Home, and Lauren had just announced the N-scale run of some of his cars, so it was kind of nice to chat with them and catch up on a few Canadians that made their way down as well. Made my way over to the Intermountain booth, and I finally got one of my 1-to-160 stickers. As well, got to see tons of stuff that they have on display of new stuff and things that they have coming down the pipe. I did also walk over and checked out the Bachmann one. Nothing really of interest, and they're horribly oversized and kind of horribly overpriced. Via car was on display here, but definitely not something I'm looking at getting. And then I went over to the Mini Prints booth and got to see Bernard in action and watch him actually scanning someone.
Say hi, Sparky.
Hi, Sparky. Everything's...
And then one of the other cool things, other than obviously seeing all the stuff that Bernard has on display and examples, I mean, he wasn't selling anything, but he had his modular layout set up there so you can see all the different stuff that he's done on display and painted up and for your own inspiration. But then also he was hosting the YouTube modelers meetup, so anyone that had a YouTube channel was invited to come over, and you got to meet up with many people that you chat with online, but sometimes you've never actually seen in person. So lots of stickers were swapped, and of course Sparky running around and interviewing people, and I even made it on Sparky's channel, and we got to see Heath unbox his Barbie sweater. And then I made my way over to the Broadway Limited setup. They have a lot of really nice stuff. I just haven't actually pulled the trigger on actually buying one yet. There's so many mixed reviews that I always hear about, and I know that they've fixed a lot of things, but I'm sure one day I'm going to end up with one of their things, but still holding back. They had the one steam locomotive, obviously not an N scale, but they had one that actually was smoking literally as it was going by, so that's certainly cool to see the technology that they're putting into basically model trains. These guys here had a really cool way of getting your own bench work done. So if you don't have the woodworking abilities or space, then you can have someone do it for you. After a little bit more walking around, then I went over to the Modeler's Life setup, and I was able to meet a whole bunch of the people that you listen to online and you hear all their voices, but then you finally actually get to meet them in person. And we had the group photo taken. Of course, we had to find the tallest guy with the longest arm to be able to take that. But of course, it was, again, cool to be able to meet people and interact and see all the names that you see online and actually shake their hands and introduce yourself. And got to meet Lionel himself, and also got to meet Marty Jenkins from overseas and have some photos taken. But that's one of the really cool things, that especially if you listen to that podcast and you would hear Lionel even promoting it himself, that it's all about the fellowship, and that's what brings everyone together. And it's very cool to see all these things and see how people have made these layouts, and then talk to many of them and even ask them questions, say, hey, how did you do that? But even just that personal touch is again, for myself, I'm kind of a lone wolf modeler where I do my own thing. I'm not part of a club. I'm not doing anything with a large group. It's kind of myself in the basement working on trains. So this is kind of neat to go out and just meet people and just talk to other train fanatics. Also dropped by the Osborne model kit setup. I have a lot of their stuff on my layout and I really enjoy the ease of putting them together, and so I had a good chat with the owner there and got to see some of the new stuff and talk about some new ideas that he has coming down the pipe, so it was cool to check that out. And there's so many people that also brought really unique ideas of small portable layouts, and it really gives to the idea that no matter how much space you have, you can make something work, whether it be a small shelf layout or set them up in guitar cases. So Saturday night ended up with a dinner with everyone at the AML hotel, and everyone got together for pizza, wings, and it was supposed to be a dance party, but I must have left before the dancing started. Probably for the better. So Sunday morning started off with a rainy start, and at one point Sunday was actually supposed to be a lot worse. We had a lot of winter weather advisories and chance of snow, rain, and everything in between, so it caused Saturday at the show to be a little bit busier, probably with a lot of the locals, because again, this is a local show for anyone in the area, that they may have gone Saturday in lieu of Sunday, which was fine for me because it made it quieter on Sunday for me. So I started off in the Mallory building, which is the building that I never actually made it to on Saturday because I was so busy with everything else. So this one has this part, which is a smaller section with more later on. So I went and checked out the Atlas setup and have lots of N-scale announcements, and this is one of the new locomotives that I have on order, and got to see a whole bunch of stuff that I had on display, and even got to see Heath interviewing someone from Atlas. I didn't go visit Athearn because they don't seem to like N-scale. But I went over and talked to the people from Prairie Shadows and got to see some of the stuff that they had on display and talk about things that they have coming down the pipe. And once again, like every other building, there was tons of layouts on display, and trains running everywhere, left, right, and center, and no shortage of action to be able to see. So once you walk down a hallway, then you get to the other 2/3 of the building, which is jam-packed with even more vendors and trains. And so I had the opportunity to be able to meet up with the people from Rapido and check out some of the Angus vans that they have on display. I have a couple of those on order. Got to see the guys from RMC actually doing their thing, behind the scenes action, and then start checking out some of the cool setups that people have. The 1 to 87th club have tons of different cars, and they didn't even actually have like a running layout. It was just flashing lights and cars on display and a static display, which was awe-inspiring. I wish I could get half of these vehicles in N scale. Even just the ideas that people come up with, like a bungee jumper. Who typically would do that with a layout? Or how you actually use mirrors. This is only actually half of a soccer field, but the way that they employed the mirror, it actually looked like a full soccer field. I couldn't figure out what the clanging sound was until I finally got to the back of the building, and then I realized that they have a little ride-on train mobile thing set up here for the kids, because it's not just the big kids at heart, but little kids are all coming to this thing, and so they had something that they could ride on. And there was a clown that was somewhere around. I saw her a couple times, but I didn't grab any pictures or video of her, but she was there again to keep everyone entertained. And you know, if you needed a break from trains, you can check out whatever funny little act that she had going on. Another setup that they had there was a Lego setup. Now I've seen Lego kits that you can get of a train, and but most of them have always seemed, at least given me the impression, that they were just more stationary, something you put on display on your shelf once you build it. But it was kind of exciting to see the realistic models that people have made, and they put their own little cool edge, like a Star Wars theme, or whatever unique idea that they want to employ, having fun with it. And I mean, that's kind of what the hobby is all about, is having fun. One cool setup that I thought was really a great idea was the Woodland Scenics one. So they had a make and take clinic for kids to make their own little diorama that they basically, from start to finish, they put down ground foam and trees, and they got to make it the way that they wanted to make it, and they were being taught how to do it the entire way along. So I thought that was a great idea for kids to be able to get involved and have something to do. Here's a model of that CT rail that I caught earlier on Friday. Someone has one on display here. I did actually step outside of the building to find out that it did actually snow. So the weather people weren't completely off. But once I finished up in the Mallory building, then I went back over to the Better Living Center and sort of popped around to try to catch some of the things that I missed. I missed these beautiful wood setups of locomotives, and never actually went over to see ITLA. This is beautiful wood cut kits that even Rod Stewart uses, and there's a picture of him signing their banner. That the quality of their kits are absolutely amazing. I'm not quite at that level yet, but I certainly had a good chat with them to sort of see how I could get into it. And right nearby the show is the West Springfield Yard, so I went over there after I was done on Sunday and caught a little bit of local switching action. They seem to be moving around some locomotives to get ready for something else, and I didn't spend too much time there, but it was nice to close off the show after going through all the buildings one more last loop to sort of make sure there's nothing I was missing or anything like that. So went over here and hung out for a little while to do a little bit more rail fanning before heading back to the hotel and getting ready for the trek back home. So speaking of the trek back home, as if we weren't done with the winter weather, then Mother Nature decided to dump a little bit of snow, and it kind of actually made it a nice picturesque drive home. I mean, I had a bunch of podcasts to listen to and keep myself occupied that way, but it was a very beautiful scenery that I had to pull off and take some photos of. And again, the roads were pretty clear, so it made for a pretty easy drive home. Of course, I had to make one more mandatory stop at Cracker Barrel, and while I was getting into my car, then of course a Black Hawk flew by, and it doesn't matter what age you are when a helicopter's flying by, you typically stop what you're doing, at least I do, and look up and check out the helicopter as it goes by. So here's a rundown of all the stuff that I ended up getting at the show. On the right hand side, some of the bridges and rolling stock are actually for my son. I ended up getting a few more stickers, and the modular columns, I ended up actually ordering them from a company called trains.com, and instead of paying the crazy shipping charges that they wanted to charge me to Canada, I set it up so I can pick it up at the show. Same with that book there. It's a hard to find book about the electric railways along the Grand River, so I made arrangements to pick that up there. And I wanted to get the Scenic Express trees. Unfortunately, they sold out on Saturday afternoon, so I ended up actually getting the starter kit. which is not exactly what I wanted, but it's close enough. And I also got a starter kit for water from Woodland Scenics. And then finally, no, I'm not moving to HO, but that was actually a boxcar that I won at Go Veer Go Home's Third Rail Thursday Christmas special. So since I met up with him down at the show, saved both of us on shipping and all that hassle, then I picked it up from him, and it's a very timely and appropriate car, being the Find the Cure cancer car. So again, even though it's not N scale, it still will find a special place in my train room. And of course, Whiskey Creek had to pick up some whiskey. So my overall thoughts of the show was amazing. Like I said at the beginning, it's not just a show, it's an experience. It's definitely a bucket list experience if you're into especially model trains. So I highly recommend, if you ever get an opportunity, to at least go once. And that's kind of where I'm at, that I've gone once and I got to experience it, and I wouldn't trade that for really anything. That was really, really special to be able to go down there and meet the people that I meet and spend the time that I was able to spend down there, and it worked out perfectly. Am I going to go next year? No. Certainly one factor is cost, and even just the time. Next year I don't think I would be able to get that much time off work to be able to go down there and to incur the costs when you think about driving down and the hotel. And I mean, the train show itself is really inexpensive. It's only, I think it's $15 a day, or if you buy both passes, it's only $27 to get into the show itself. But it's all the other extra add-ons, that food and hotel and gas, and also just the stuff that you buy. So am I going to go next year? No. Will I go the year after? No. I probably would be interested in going in a few years' time, and maybe not make this a yearly thing, but every 5 years maybe I would be interested in doing something like that, or every few years maybe go down there, because I'm sure some of the layouts, whether or not they're going to change or how much of new stuff. And the one thing I found, especially as a very picky end scaler, is there's only so much stuff that I could find. I certainly found stuff for my son, and it was a little bit more of a stretch to find things for myself because nobody had Go Transit cars, as an example. But it's not just necessarily for the shopping, it's for all the other things that go with it. So do I want to go back? Absolutely. Will it be next year? No. I'll continue to save up my money, and gotta also save up in hopes that maybe Rapido or someone like that will release some N-scale Go Transit. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But until that time, I highly recommend anyone else that has the opportunity, 100% you should go. See the show, enjoy the experience, and let me know what you think. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this as much, or even as close as much as I did. It's hard to really put things sometimes into words or even into pictures and video, the experience that you feel being there. So like I said, I highly recommend that if you get the opportunity and the stars line up for you, definitely you should go. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.